So, welcome to the Bernard Alvarez broadcast, webcast. Today we are going to be discussing Do What You Will, the philosophy and ethics of magic, of spirituality, and what does that mean for us? How does that apply to us on a day-to-day basis? I find that many people get a little bit confused as to what that means, and I felt it would be really important for us to perhaps go into a little bit more detail of exactly what that means. So I'd like to start off by maybe investigating and diving a little bit deeper into that phrase that we hear so often, do what you will. The one person who did make that become pretty popular, I believe it was started during the Thelemic era of Aleister Crowley, when he wrote the book 777. Again, I might be mistaken, but I believe it was about that time. And he was told by his holy guardian angel that the whole of the law shall be do what thou will, love under will. There's a lot of misconceptions to that and a lot of confusion, and even Crowley kind of confused it in its own interpretation. And I'm going to move on to the Wiccan Rede, which we're all very aware of, do what thou will, harm none, do what thou will. But let's dive into what Aleister Crowley was talking about first. When Aleister Crowley had his, and we had very similar experiences, many of us in the realm of magic are lucky enough to communicate with our guides and our higher selves and whatnot. And during his conversation with his holy guardian angel, as he called it, he was told the whole of the law shall be do what thou will, love under will. So right there, we sound like there's a little bit of a hedonistic carpe diem mentality, and nothing could be further from the truth. What people seem to misinterpret about that particular law is that when Crowley was discussing, or I should say, when his holy guardian angel was imparting this wisdom upon him, they made it clear, the guides or the spirit guides, the angels, whatever you wish to call it, made it very clear that it is love under will with a capital W. Crowley went on to say further that the capital WILL is not our will. It is the will of our higher self. It is the will of Source, of God, of higher consciousness, of higher understanding, that is the will that is implied in this. As a matter of fact, most of the work that I do, I'm not going to say was inspired by Crowley, because it's not, but there are a lot of things that overlap in the sense that I do believe that it is through developing a relationship with our higher self and our guides or our source consciousness that we get the inspiration to do what is right for ourselves and for those who are around us. So when, again, going back to what he was saying, do what thou will, capital WILL, meant thou, capital THOU, capital WILL, thou will, means aligning with your higher conscious self and allowing that to be the motivation of your actions. And within that, we have the understanding that everything that we do has repercussions, the karmic, the energetic ripples that it reverberates out to the universe. We understand that. We understand them, have that higher knowledge of knowing that our thoughts, our words, and our deeds do ripple out. And therefore, we will conduct ourselves through the highest sense. So now let's move forward a little bit, a couple decades, a decade or two, when Gerald Gardner kind of borrowed heavily, as we all know, a lot of Gardnerian witchcraft and magic is borrowed from the Freemasons, which was Crowley borrowed, Golden Dawn and all that stuff. A lot of it was borrowed. And so Gardner borrowed, or actually added to, harm none, do what you will. And again, there are still many misconceptions and a lot of perverted definitions of what that means. And I don't, yeah, sure, sexual perversion, but I mean perverted in the sense of truth and of understanding what that means. Harm none, do what you will literally means do what you will as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. And you see me say that all the time. You do whatever you want to do. Don't ever let me tell you what's wrong for you. Don't ever let anybody else tell you what's wrong for you, as long as it's not harming anybody. Now, it depends on how high of a level you want to take this at. We could go as far as saying that harm none means don't harm yourself. Don't smoke, don't do drugs, don't eat unhealthy. You know, you can really become an extremist when it comes to this. But I think as far as I feel, as far as a rule of personal behavior, I won't even say a rule, a guide, or as we call it, a Rede of personal conduct and personal behavior, harm none means don't harm another person. Again, you can take it to the extremist level. Don't harm the environment, don't harm animals, don't harm insects. We can get a little bit carried away, but I will say when it comes to sentient beings, we must understand that harm is not what you think is harm. Yeah, I'm giving you a minute to contemplate that. Harm is not what you believe is harm, how you define harm. That's not what is being implied here. Harm is what the other person implies or feels is harm. Whoever you're harming. And that goes very well when we come to define harm as how we personally define harm toward ourselves. I know this is getting a little convoluted, so let me clarify it for you. The biblical or Christian or Judeo-Christian golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, can be easily twisted. And actually this takes it to a higher level. When we think about do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work for a rapist. It doesn't work for a pedophile. It doesn't work for a murderer or even, and again, I'm not one to judge people that are into bondage, S&M, and that kind of stuff. Harm is implied. It is a part of people enjoy harm, or people that have a fetish for it. Same thing can go for pedophiles and rapists. So do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Does it really work in the grand scheme of things? However, when we look at the terminology of harm none, do what you will, means if I'm pulling somebody's hair and they like it, I'm not harming them. Hey, that's a fetish. Good for them, good for us, whatever, don't judge. But if I'm pulling somebody's hair and they're like, ow, stop that, that means I'm harming somebody. Don't do it. If calling people names, they don't like being called names. You know, there's this whole political correctness thing going on, which quite obviously is very frustrating for many of us who are over the age of 30. All these new terminologies and things like that. And you know what? The reality of it is I'm not going to, if I'm to apply this rule, if I'm going to apply this ethical behavior, I'm not going to mislabel people, I'm not going to misgender people, and I'm not going to impose my will on other people. And this is where I'm going with this. Harm none, do what you will as well means imposing your will on other people. Whether you think your will is doing good or it's doing bad, it's not up to you. A couple of days ago, and I love when a negative interaction online inspires me to talk about things like this. I had a negative interaction with somebody, apparently it was a newly found YouTube fan or whatnot, and decided to like my personal profile, not my Bernard Alvarez fan page, Facebook page with 300,000 followers. Now I'm talking about my personal profile. And I'm very, how shall we say, expressive on that one. It's not my professional page. It's my, I'm cranky today, I have a headache today, I am pissed off at the news today, and I will express that. So apparently I posted something that they did not approve of. And immediately I'm getting called all these names and whatnot, and my post was about people imposing their religious or political beliefs on an entire group of people. It's a lot of controversy going on right now about a particular thing. I'm not going to get into it here, but let's just say women's rights are involved, and men are imposing their will upon women as a whole general group, as a group. This happens not only to women, it happens to people of color, it happens to people from other countries, where we begin to feel that this entire group of people is not worthy of their personal freedoms, and we decide either as a political party, as a religious group, or even as a country, that it is okay to oppress them due to our religious beliefs, political beliefs, nationalistic beliefs, spiritual, dogmatic beliefs, whatever it is. Well, I'm telling you now, if we truly are walking the talk, if we consider ourselves to be higher conscious beings, if we are holding other people to this higher regard, which we should never hold anybody higher than ourselves or lower than ourselves, but if we are going to walk the talk of harm none, do what you will, we must hold ourselves accountable and take responsibility for that, no matter what your religious beliefs are. I'm hoping there is a passage actually in my book, and let's see if I can find it quickly. I didn't bookmark it, so just give me 1 second. Oh, okay. And it's on freedom. It's passage 20 of the Book of One. Freedom for one may not be freedom for another. If freedom restricts or oppresses another, then it is not true freedom. For freedom to be true freedom, it must apply to all people and must be accepted in all forms. This is true freedom. Now, some people might believe that, well, they don't have the right to that type of freedom. They're not doing what I want them to do. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. The Book of One also moves on to say, and actually this is a passage prior to that, it's chapter 11, the sovereign mind, and I talk a lot about the sovereign mind. It says, let no man force you to believe his ideals. Let no law restrict you from experiencing life. For the true meaning of right and wrong lie within your soul. Listen to your soul and you can do no wrong. Follow the restrictive laws of a land and impose another's restrictions upon yourself, and you will lose touch with your soul. If you lose touch with your soul, you'll have lost touch with the one. Therefore, you have lost the meaning of your life. Well, there's plenty more in my book that talk about these things, but I guess what I'm trying to impart here today is that in accepting that we individually have our own personal spiritual path, that we have the freedom to explore our spiritual path as we deem fit for ourselves. Not only do we have the freedom to explore our spiritual path, we have the freedom to explore our emotional path, our life path, our career path, our sexual path, whatever it is, so long as it harms none or imposing harm upon another person that does not wish to have that harm imposed upon them, we must hold ourselves accountable to perceive and to carry ourselves in a way that allows everybody else that same freedom, that personal freedom of and harm none. If they're not harming anyone that doesn't want to be harmed, that's none of our business. And when we impose our will and our beliefs and our dogma upon other people, what we're doing is we are restricting them to experience life as is intended for them. There's a passage in the book as well that talks about that we all go to school every day. It is not for us to judge the path of a friend, of a lover, of someone who is maybe doing something that is not necessarily what you would do for yourself, or perhaps that you might deem as harmful for yourself, but they don't deem it as harmful for themselves. Good example, let's talk about and just a common example I think everybody can relate to is the disease of addiction. Most addicts don't know they're addicts until they get to, they hit bottom. And even once they've hit bottom and they decide that they want to move into a path of recovery, whatever that might be, a 12-step program or abstinence or moderation, whatever it is, the reality of it is that they may slip. You may have people in your lives who, I share this with you because I have friends, close friends, who are in recovery, and every once in a while I do see them relapse, and I'm there to help them through the relapse. Of course I am. Now, when it begins to affect my happiness, when it begins to affect, let's say they steal from me, or let's say they make my house dirty, giving you an example of where it starts affecting me negatively, then I see it as harm for me, and I no longer wish to be a part of that particular assistance that I may have offered at one time. So it's not up to me to say, stop doing those drugs, stop drinking that alcohol. It's not up to me to say, don't, there was a discussion on my page the other day about the legalization of mushrooms. It's not for me to say what is right and wrong for your path. The only thing I can say is that when it begins to harm me, when I begin to deem harm coming in my direction, I have the freedom to cut myself off from that. And so do you. So do you. If you don't like what somebody else is doing, you don't have to do it, and you don't have to be a party to it. But for you to try to A, legislate, B, ridicule and or judge and or, how shall we say, impose your will upon that person's path, that is not your place. That is not your place. The only place that you have complete freedom in is in what you deem harmful to you and what you choose to allow in your day-to-day life. Is it harmful to you? You don't want it in your life? Fine. You have the right to say you don't want that in your life. If we are going to be truly free, if we are truly going to live from that, do what you will shall be the whole of the law, love under will, or harm none, do what thou will, capital W, we have to hold ourselves to that higher standard of understanding and having the clarity that it is within us. And not only me, not only you, but your neighbor, but your friend, but your partner, but the lady going into the voting booth or to other places that you may not want them to go to, or doing things you don't want them to do. It's up to them to choose what is right and wrong for them. That's not your place. That's a big responsibility. And and this is the whole idea of the magical Rede, the Wiccan Rede, harm not, do what you will, also calls you to be responsible and be willing to accept the repercussions of bad choices, of, bad lovers, bad life paths, bad medical procedures, whatever it is, harm none, do what you will means also you must accept the responsibility of any negative impact that comes to you. The freedom to do as you will also must come with the responsibility of how it affects the people around you and how it might affect you in the long run. So when we talk about magical ethics and magical philosophy, it's about a higher level of freedom. It's about a higher level of personal responsibility and accepting and being willing to accept personal responsibility for our own personal path. And in accepting responsibility for our own personal path, we must allow others that same choice, that same freedom. Anyway, it's time for me to go. I will see you all next week. I have a lovely guest joining me next week. If you remember, actually, I'm not going to get into it now. I'll post the event. Also, please remember that the webcast on Facebook will now be at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesdays and 12 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube on Fridays. All right, everybody. I love you. Have a wonderful week. Take care, and I'll see you next week.